but I'm not ready yet. So just hold off a couple minutes. All right, Dave, just let me know. Give me a countdown.
-5.
Oh, great. You see how they all left me out hanging out to dry too? Nobody wanted to jump in. I just obviously came in like we weren't live, and Steve just oblivious. It's that whole thing. Rob, did you see his head
I was just trying to see
nodding?
if you're
Just like we talked about.
Yep, exactly. Yep, exactly.
Just like we talked about.
And I'm not
Well,
yellow today. People are noticing. Thanks to you, Dave, for not making me look like a
there for a
carrot today.
while. There for a while last night, you were fading in from like a light blue to a pink, and
it was like out of Star Trek. It was like
that.
those
That
episodes.
was actually me trying to fix your yellow feed, Steve.
Yeah,
Just saying,
Well,
the
but I was
yellow
like,
is on your end.
I don't know.
I
It's
was like,
not today,
if
right?
colors existed, I might think that Steve was malfunctioning, but he doesn't exist either. So
was-
it all actually made sense. It really did.
I don't know why I was so desaturated. It was weird.
I don't know either, but you and desaturation seem to go hand in hand. I think that's dead on. Well, we have 3 people with us today, 3 lovely people. I will be probably, you'll see throughout the stream, be caught staring at the guy in between Steve and I, but don't mind me. I I'm just kidding. I like making Rob blush. Yes, Steve. Oh, you're fingering Rob. Okay. I thought you were raising your hand for a question. Okay.
No, I'm just playing with Rob.
Good. We've got Wayne Philmore. Hello, Wayne.
I was muted for a minute. What's up, guys?
Cool. Matt Clark, Gray Skeptic.
Oh, wait.
Sorry. Hey, everyone.
By the way, Steve. There you go. And and then General Han Solo from Sentinel Apologetics, Robert Rowe.
Nice to be back.
Awesome.
The show's going well.
Nice to have you back. Nice to have you back. Yeah, it a little bumpy road last week, but it's good to be back. Very good to be back.
Yeah, I was going through a withdrawal.
Yeah, so were we. And then you get back, and some of the shows that you have, you're like, well, maybe those couple days off wasn't so bad.
Maybe that wasn't so bad.
Yeah. So I've just got a couple quick announcements real quick. Tomorrow, I'm going to be putting out a really cool video in light of the Jilly Juice, and there's that thing we're going to talk about Sunday, actually, with Katie Paulson from Pathios, with the miracle mineral solution scam. I decided it would be a good idea to maybe put out a video reminding people why it's important to be skeptical, no matter what side of the religious debate that you come from, or even any debate. It's important that you're skeptical to a certain degree. And so we've got featured in that video tomorrow that's going to come out. It'll be at 9:00 in the morning. We've got Logic, Aaron Ra, Jeff Holiday, Rags, Holy Kool-Aid, Godless Engineer, Shannon, Prophet of Zod, Mr. Atheist, Bionic Dance, and Creationist Cat are all going to be reminding you of the reasons why it's important to be skeptical. And if any of you, I know you noticed, but our nun, our symbol of the show, the smoking nun, there's another counterpart to our nun, and you're going to meet that counterpart tomorrow. So it's a really cool video. I'm excited about it coming out. So check that out. It's going to be at 9:00. And then the next Saturday, we have a Patreon-only show. Everybody knows that we do the bi-weekly private Patreon hangouts, but we're going to be doing an entire show like we do here with a topic and a discussion. And that's going to be next Saturday. And we've got Trevor Valley as one of the people that's coming in. So he's going to be talking about his work at the La Brea Tar Pits. And then we've got another guest, which you'll find out when you come to the show. So if you're a Patreon, we look forward to seeing you there. Also, in just a second, I'm going to put the link to go vote for the Golden Nuns in the description. The Golden Nuns are sort of like the Academy Awards, but for really cool content creators and dumpster fires. So we've got, we're giving away the Golden Dumpster as well. And you can vote on these categories by going to tinyurl.com/golden nuns. And I'll put that link in the description here in just a second. But the categories are there. The first part of the voting is for the YouTube wide section. So you can nominate anybody. It doesn't have to be somebody that's been on the show. And you'll actually fill that in when you go there. And then the second part will be non-sequitur specific shows. And those are multiple choice. So you'll have to choose from like best debate, most notorious guest, best dumpster fire, the Dunning-Kruger Award, which if George Lujack doesn't win that, then something's wrong with people's voting. Wouldn't you agree, Steve?
Yeah, I think he's a shoe-in for at least one or two.
So yeah, that you can go check that out. But that's all that I have. Steve, you got anything before we ramp up?
No, just again, let you guys know, Rob, I think, is going to be joining us again on Sunday for the DEF CON 1 Science, where we talk about what happened before the Big Bang, if that's a sensible question. So I think Rob's going to be joining us for that. So, right, Rob?
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we know
Yeah,
we know his answer.
Pretty face. I don't know. I don't. I really, honestly, have never asked him.
Well, actually, I'm siding with Steve on this one.
God did it.
Do you think so? The question
No.
is a question sensical. If I say what happened before the Big Bang, I think that's a nonsensical phrase question, like asking,
it's nonsensical.
where do you find the imaginary number on the real number line? It makes no sense to ask it.
Because even Lawrence Krauss in his work was proposing something similar to what Kyle's proposing, and then everyone in the panel was telling Lawrence Krauss mathematically that makes no sense. So
well, Lawrence Krauss agrees with me, so I'll take that. I'll take that.
I'm not sure that he does.
Thank you, Rob.
But
you know what? Somebody pointed out in the comments.
I'm just saying what he proposes as before.
Sure.
Is
yeah. Somebody pointed out in the comments under that first when we first brought this up, and I think they hit the nail on the head when they said that you weren't following. What I was meaning was completely different from what you were meaning in terms of before, because the explanation of the time didn't exist, therefore it wasn't a thing. That wasn't kind of following down where I was going, but I'll explain more when we go Sunday about what I mean before.
Oh yeah, I got a presentation that I came up with. Landon's got some few things to add. We're going to be talking about the no boundary proposal by Hawking. We're going to talk about quantum wave functions. We're going to be talking about what it means to exist as far as t greater than 1 by inflationary theory. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. So it's going to be a fun episode. It's
going to be bitching, guys. So make sure you check it out. It's going to be bitching.
You get to learn some real science and math, like heavy duty stuff, actually.
And what happened Big Bang. Matt Clark, introduce yourself, sir. Tell everybody what the channel is and where they can find you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. I'm Matt Clark, the Gray Skeptic. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Gray Skeptic. You can also find me on Twitter at Gray Skeptic Mac. I mostly just make videos relating to atheism, trying to also focus on philosophy a little bit too, or like philosophical arguments, and want to focus more on logical fallacies. But yeah, that's my channel in a nutshell.
What's your favorite logical fallacy?
My favorite logical fallacy? The non-sequitur.
Good answer. Good answer.
Go
all right. Mr. Philmore.
Hola.
Hola. ¿Cómo están?
I can say that on here, right? That's not racist, right?
A black guy saying hola, I think you're okay.
Okay, cool. All right.
Did you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and your channel and where people can find you?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say that. So my channel is Science Enthusiast. You guys can even look me up under Wayne Philmore. I talk about science, religion, faith. I talk about atheism sometimes. But my channel is mainly to help religious people understand that you can go out and you can explore the world and you can learn things about the universe, and you don't have to be afraid. You can find out new things about the world, and you don't have to be in shock or be in a constant war with reality and your beliefs.
Cool. And last but most definitely not least, Robbie, tell everybody who you are.
A collector of statues like this Pythagoras. That's who I am, and nothing more to say.
Very interesting. Very interesting intro. I wasn't expecting that. Collector of statues. Okay, collector of statues. Where can people find you?
So I run Sentinel Apologetics. It's a academically orientated think tank of a blend of Christianity with pretty much all things science. There's absolutely no fudging of the science data. It's just taking the best in scholarship of both the Bible and science, including evolution, and seeing if they harmonize. And that's basically my endeavor.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to read off a topic that Wayne proposed. I thought it was a good way to put it up, and that'll kind of set the stage for tonight. If I can find where I did that. Here we go. Okay, so you want to talk about how science and people say that science and religion can't go hand in hand, even though both sides get it wrong sometimes. Basically, some people think that science has disproven theism altogether, and religious people think that science and religion can't really be compatible because one's trying to always disprove the other. So I think we're going to try to hit why Wayne thinks that science and religion can coexist. Actually, that's the focus of your channel too, isn't it, Wayne? That's what you try to put out there, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So yeah, we'll start with you, Wayne. Why don't you let us know why you think that they can, and also tell people about you as as just from a personal standpoint, like what it is you believe in the theism realm.
Okay, cool. So, man, if you would have met me about how many years ago, Steve? Now, like 3 years ago?
Oh, 3 years? Yeah, about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, about like 3 years. If you would have met me 3 years ago and you would have asked me some questions scientifically, like how old is the universe, or where do fossils come from, or what else, or did the Big Bang really happen? I would have told you, no, the universe is 6,000 years old and fossils come from the Great Flood. And so my answers definitely have changed in respect to that. But I still hold the same core belief. I still believe in God. I still believe in Jesus. Still believe in the Bible. But my beliefs on reality, as far as the science goes, they've changed, and that's okay. That is completely fine. A lot of people who come from the same background I come from, who are younger creationists, or who are younger creationists, they think that if somebody proves that the universe or the earth is not 6,000 years old, that disproves God, or that disproves their faith, or that disproves their religion. And that is just blatantly not true. So to the people in the audience who do come from that type of background, the universe, number one, is not 6,000 years old. It's a lot older than that. And secondly, that is okay. That is completely fine. It's okay to change your mind based off of the evidence. And so that's basically how conversations and discussions or debates like this can be beneficial. As a matter of fact, it was in a debate against Steve McRae, I changed my mind as far as evolution. So I think that's pretty awesome. You can have debates and you can have discussions with people, and if they're open-minded, you can make an impact on them. Secondly, I want to start off with a quote from me. So a lot of times we hear the question of how has religion benefited from society, and so I took some time out of my busy day and I had made this post. So some people say, how has religion benefited from society or benefited society? Usually, when people ask this question, they are looking for an answer as to how religion has innovated technology rather than how religion predates science and has innovated culture. Long before iPads and cell phones, people would look up at the stars in the sky and they would ask, I wonder how they got there. That's a scientific question. I wonder why anything exists at all. That's a philosophical question. And then they would conclude, I think the reason why all things exist at all is because there's a divine creator behind it all. And that is where religion comes into play. And what I think people in the 21st century don't understand is all of those questions can be true because they are all different attempts to understand reality from three different ways. As the saying goes, science and religion are opposed the same way our thumb and fingers are opposed. They work and this word is crazy. They work orthogonically in important
Orthogonal.
ways, but yeah, there you go. Orthogonally in ways, but their power is they can use together to grasp something that neither could on their own. That's how in my
Wayne, you might want to check your like where you're sitting. Where the last part was popping in and out.
Yeah, cut
So I
out.
don't know if your signals
so
your signal or
yeah,
what. But I want to check that. But while you look that, we'll Mac, in response, you heard what he said. He's willing to have his mind open if you can change it. Steve brought him from young Earth creationism a couple years ago. Now it's your responsibility to bring him all the way into atheist arms. We've got him extended, Wayne. We'll let Matt Clark go ahead and take care of the rest. No pressure.
Easy task, no pressure. I do this all the time. Actually, I do want to make a note that I watched that debate, and it was really cool. It was like about an hour and a half afterwards. Wayne came back in, and he had looked at the information that Steve had put forth, and he changed his mind, just like he said. It was really, really cool, and it was really intellectual, honest, and I really respect Wayne for that. I think that we agree on a lot of points. Religion and science can coexist. They don't have to always butt heads, like generally speaking. But I think in a lot of ways, if you look at specifics and certain parts of science, compare it to certain parts of the Bible, it's really easy to disprove the Bible on a lot of points. And I think that really pushes apologetics back into a corner where you have to take so much of the Bible as not fact or allegory, to the point how much can you trust it to be any kind of reference? That's kind of my take on it. I like how Wayne pointed out, before we had science, we had religion, and even back then we were looking up at the stars and being like, how did it all get here? And that's like a scientific question. Why is it all here? That's a philosophical question. And just how did it all get here overall, and why is it here in the first place together is asked, I feel like, in a religious sense. And I think that science, religion, and philosophy together really have shaped our world. But I feel like science has superseded the previous two. Not that neither have no place in society whatsoever in any way, but I feel like science has superseded it due to the scientific method, where we really check things and then recheck things. Like, you make a hypothesis, you use an experiment to check it out, and you kind of go on like a okay, well, this matches or it doesn't, and you have to go back to the beginning, or you can look at your conclusion and then someone else can test out that conclusion. It's all very controlled, and I think that's something that religion and even philosophy doesn't do as well as science does. So I don't know where we want to go from here.
All right, Rob, do anything you want to throw in there at this point?
I don't know. Should I is this a three-way conversation, or is it just between Wayne and Mac?
I mean, I'm cool with you like saying something, because like, or else you're just going to be like a third wheel.
Okay.
I'm sure you are, Wayne.
So
yeah, go for it.
I knew Wayne. So I met Steve and Wayne, end of 2015. So it's been 3 years. I actually first debated Wayne, I think, before Steve did, and but I was coming from a Christian context, showcasing an old Earth and all that. Initially, we were butting heads, but now we're best of friends. And then Steve, took the mantle and did a good job with that, with the evolution part. So it goes to show that when the data is presented right, in a very right way, like in a proper way, in an educational way, and when I say educational, that's a key term, not in a flippant way or where bits and pieces are missing. No, in a very consistent, drawn out, proper way, like what Steve did, then that would be the antidote to a lot of the anti-intellectualism that goes on in the church. And that's actually my desire, is to get rid of this anti-intellectualism that's actually growing, and it's been growing for the last 50, 60 years. The church, I was actually in dialogue with a friend about a week ago, a Christian friend of mine, where we were sharing this frustration that if you look back from the 18th century back, the church wasn't anti-intellectual at all. They were at the forefront of science, but because of the rise of Darwinism, and then from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, you have the younger creationists. I don't know why, but it just, like wildfire, just crept through the entire church, and now we have to deal with organizations like Answers in Genesis and Ken Ham and all that. So that would be my intro of thoughts, I guess, in regards to this discussion.
Okay.
And by the way, I'm here on a whim, so I have nothing planned to, yeah. Go ahead.
Did you want to expand on that? Anything that you heard, Mac, before we turn back over to Wayne, based on what Rob said? Because I'm pretty sure that Wayne would agree with Rob there.
There's one thing, and it's not super duper important, but since I was thinking it, I might as well get it out. I don't remember when you said exactly, but centuries ago, when the church was like at the center of scientific discoveries. I find that very what's the word? Like that would happen. The church had a lot of power and probably a lot of money at the time, and they had the means to make scientific discoveries. Just because you're religious, just like Wayne said, that doesn't mean you don't wonder about scientific questions. So it doesn't speak to me, and I'm not saying that you're saying this specifically, but I know that a lot of Christians do. Just because religion made a lot of scientific discoveries doesn't mean that the religious part was right.
Wayne?
Yeah, there's a nuance that I agree with, because Christians will latch onto that as an apologetic argument that,
right,
since there were religious scientists in the past, therefore Christianity is true. And I don't buy that argument. I think religion or the biblical data should stand by itself, and then the scientific data should stand by itself. And so kind of like how science is all about models, so everything should just be a model approach. But ultimately,
I agree with that.
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
can't say what somebody 500 years ago would think if they were brought forward to our time, right? If Newton was alive today, his knowledge, would just he would be astounded by things like relativity and quantum mechanics. We don't know what that would lead to him, theologically speaking. So it really has no importance what somebody believed 100, 200 years ago.
But we know he would have an iPhone because it's Apple.
Mm-hmm.
But Mac, there are science historians who argue about, or who discuss the rise of the Western way of thinking, Western technology, Western scientific progress, and it has deep roots in Reformation Europe. And so I even recently, when I didn't even know about Jordan Peterson, for example, and I don't know how he's viewed in this panel, but he's also brought up this idea about the logos as being the foundation by which rational thinking led the way, critical thinking led the way. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I agree.
All right, Wayne, this is your show. It's not mine. Go ahead.
So, Mac, you did say, man, you said a lot. I wrote down some of what you said. So you said, as far as the Bible goes, or like religious text is a historical, and if you said, basically Christians keep putting the Bible, back by saying, oh, it's, this is allegorical or this is not necessarily historical. I honestly, that's been, man, stuff like that has been debated for a very, very long time. And I would say that, once again, both sides on that issue, they're not really seeing the bigger picture. I think some people think if a story is not historical, then that means that the story itself is not true. But it depends, it's contingent upon what is the author trying to communicate. So if I'm trying to communicate a religious or spiritual truth in the message, then the historical aspects of it don't necessarily count. If we find the evidence for it that it turns out to be historical, that's great. But looking at a story like, for example, like Genesis, in my opinion, I don't think it was written to be historical anyway. So it really wouldn't matter. But I know people try and say that if you don't take one part historical, then the whole rest of it falls apart. And you would be correct if the Bible one book, but it's no book. It's a library. The word Bible actually means library. It's a library. It's a collection of many different books from different authors' opinions. So that's what I would say to that. But secondly, I would say I think religion is extremely important. I think religion, when taught right, it can actually help us expand on our scientific curiosity. For example, before we had Big Bang cosmology, Lemaitre went and he found evidence for the Big Bang and etc. I feel as if the who held to the atheist side of the debate, I think it actually may have been them who actually killed scientific discovery and curiosity. When Lemaitre brought forth his foundings to Einstein and Apple, Einstein said, "Oh, your math is correct, but the whole thing is just it's terrible. It doesn't make sense. The universe just has always been here. Everything has just been how it is." And so it actually was that, you could say that religious curiosity of how did things get here and how did things come to be and etc. that actually ended Lemaitre's findings and his work as far as the beginning of the universe. If it weren't for Lemaitre actually going out and say, you know what, maybe this isn't the whole story. Maybe there might be something else, something beyond me, etc., we wouldn't even have Big Bang cosmology today. So I think what I'm trying to say is that religious curiosity definitely, along with the scientific curiosity, I think they work better together.
I almost agree, but I disagree. Because I like a lot of your points. And I'm not trying to just tear everything down that you say. one thing that I do want to say though is it's kind of hard to have this discussion and to talk about religion as a whole, because religion isn't just Christianity. But I feel like we can agree that we're mostly just talking about Christianity, right? For the sake of what we know.
Yeah, we can just talk about Christianity. I was arguing for religion like in general, but sure, let's just talk
in general. Okay, because that's what I'm going to reference the most. I don't want to talk too much about something that I don't know. But I mean, if you want to bring anything else up, that's fine. And if I just don't know about it, I'll just be honest. I don't know about it. But as far as Christianity go, that's even a wide topic. Because I was hesitant to say what I said to Rob, because I don't want to put any words in anyone's mouth, because there's so many different forms of Christianity. I'm not sure which part to hone in on, because I don't know exactly what you believe. So I don't know really where to focus in on the science and what you believe. But the
do you want to narrow
the
it
thing
down?
about, I'm sorry?
Do you want to narrow it down? We can have Wayne explain it. Like, for example, if not evolution, what's he believe in that place? Would you want to have him?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
Let me make one
define
point
it.
real quick, and then we can move on.
Yeah.
But the because he said that without religion and without those like religious questions, we might not get to like what we know today, like what we know about the cosmos, what we know about like the Big Bang and evolution and everything that we know, without asking these questions and having religion to think about. But I think that that's a fine guess. Maybe someone else would have come up with it, and maybe they were using more philosophical questions than religious questions. I think that there's a lot more to philosophy that you're equating with religion, which puts more value in philosophy for me than it would religion. And like I said, I don't think that religion is completely minute, but I do think a lot of what you're thinking rings to me. It sounds more like philosophy, and I think philosophy really drives science in a lot of ways. There, I'm done.
All right, Wayne, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you believe as far as how we got here? Like, what did you replace
I would say
your belief in creation science with?
Modern science. I replaced creation science with modern science. But creation science, let me just go on the record and say creation science is, I'll quote Steve, it's a bastardization of real science. If creation science were real, if creation science were real, we all would be dead. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's kind of self-refuting. I mean, minor technicalities. It may be true if we would actually be able to survive it. Sure, you know.
So, man. So as far as the universe, how it came to be and how we got here and et cetera, I mean, you can literally open up a science textbook and it'll give you like the nitty gritty details, Big Bang cosmology, and then you have the Earth cooling down, and over those million years, things evolve and humans get here, or Homo sapiens get here, and boom, we're here today. That's in a nutshell. But I think the question of how we got here can still be, I can say, answered differently as far as it relates to me in a philosophical context. So I guess the how we got here is important, but I guess what you're trying to say is why. What do I believe as far as the why? Like, what do I believe as far as the driving factor behind all of this? Yeah, I definitely do see. I see the need in reality, in nature, for a causal agent. I do think there are certain questions as far as the why question. You go back far enough in time, before the Big Bang, which you guys said, that doesn't even make sense. So prior to what we know about reality, there does come into play where we do have to ask these questions like, why? And so in the last discussion I had on here with Hugo and Jake, very, very good people, they mentioned, and this also is it's not so far off from what many skeptics will say. They said, well, the why question, that doesn't matter because that question doesn't make sense. And I think it does make sense. I think that is maybe, if not only, one of the biggest questions that should be asked about the universe. And I think skepticism has this attitude where that's a question that you can't ask. I think because once you go down that line of why and those type of philosophical mishaps, I think skepticism turns out to be very weak. And so I do think you need some type of causal agent. Now, when I say causal agent, I don't necessarily mean God. This causal agent just has to fit the best, philosophical explanation. But it turns out that it just so happens to be that whatever, caused this universe or caused this existence or caused this reality, it turns out that this God, philosophically, I would say, happens to be the most plausible explanation. Now, there could be another explanation that is better than God. I'm open to it. But for the last couple, thousands of years, even the brightest of minds have thought that this causal agent was consistent with what people call God. So I think so. Yeah, Kyle, to answer your question, what do I believe about reality and how the why is more important? I think God. You know what? I can answer this even more differently. A lot of Christians will say they believe God created the universe and he individually placed each star, and he actually, I think they mean God literally physically created the planets and the moon and the stars. Like he actually took his little divine hands, or well, not little, he took his divine hands and he made the cosmos. Like a person makes a building. I don't think it happened like that. I think what happened was God, in the beginning, he makes this cosmic egg, which we call the universe, which we could call it the Big Bang. And inside of this cosmic egg are the fundamental ingredients and the laws of physics and etc. to make everything that we know today. And he simply lets the whole thing play out. He doesn't need to actually go and actually create a universe per se. I think God is so smart, he can create a universe that can create itself. And so that is, I guess, where you could say my beliefs definitely differ from a lot of evangelical Christians today. But if you go back, there were a lot of Catholics who would tell you the same exact thing I'm telling you right now. So I guess that we would differ, and that's what I believe as far as how we came to be.
All right. And Mac, before we get your response to that, let me, Rob looks like he's got something he wants to add in on that, and then you can respond to both. Rob?
No, I'm just formulating ideas. I think.
Oh, I thought you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
No, that's his thinking pose. That's his.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look really smart for like 10 minutes, and then when I get asked a question, I'll be like, I'm still working on that. See, I'm just like he's like my puppet. Watch, I get. Yeah, I'm just gonna here we go.
He's posing for me. He's posing for me. Just nicely done.
He's got a good thinking
Mac.
pose.
Go ahead, Mac.
I mean, I just a quick 2-second comment. I can vouch. I mean, that last comment that Wayne said about Catholics, and I think to be more precise, before the Catholic Church, you had church fathers that spoke about, like for example, Basil and Augustine, that used the language of let the earth bring forth and let the waters bring forth. That language in Genesis to mean that it's an like the natural world does its thing, it germinates and evolves, and so it's interesting that even back in those days, they were thinking about, in a very primitive way, what we are discovering today.
Yeah.
Okay.
And from my old religious standpoint, I would agree with you. I would agree with you very much so. I always thought that God just did things in the most natural way. That's just how he liked it. He made the universe, let it go, and here it is. Now I don't see a need for that God at all. I feel like the Big Bang explains it in a way where you just don't need the God. So I feel like saying, well, a God could have done it is just kind of a presupposition that you really just don't need. And what was my other point I was thinking? But yeah, I think at around the same time that you were a young Earth creationist, Wayne, I think I was about where you are now, but I was never really a young Earth creationist to a T. So there's a bit of a difference there. But yeah, I think there's the way that you look at it to me is like a presupposition of God that we just don't need. So I don't really think it's necessary. I don't really know what else to add to that.
Okay.
From that point.
Wayne?
So the way I look at it is like I always refer to different philosophy theologians before. They always say, the universe is not so reflectant of a machine as it reflects a mind. Like you've heard the arguments where, why do the laws of physics, why are they so consistent, etc. And so it gets to the point philosophically where I think I don't think you need to put I don't think you need to necessarily need a God, but it just so makes most. And so I think that's actually where Christians run into the problem, evangelical Christians, where they make these arguments, and these arguments are like, well, this argument proves there's a need for a God. Not necessarily so. It would be the same as if somebody was postulating a different model for the origin of life, and they say, oh, well, in order for this to happen, we need for this to happen. Surely it could have happened some other type of way, and who's to say we might not find that other way? Then we can say, well, it didn't need to happen, but we go with whatever makes the most sense and has the most evidence. So I think Christians and both atheists are looking at it in the wrong way. I wouldn't believe in God because I think God is a need. I think God definitely is the best explanation. If there's a better explanation, somebody show me, somebody sit with me.
You're breaking up again.
Yeah, you're breaking up quite a bit.
I
Let me ask you a
believe
question.
you want somebody to show you better proof for God, right? Than God.
Yeah, let me ask him a question why he's fixing
Go for
that
it,
mic situation. Because I'm kind of curious, because when you say that God's a plausible explanation, because that's what you're believing, that the explanation for whatever, let's say the existence of the universe, fair enough. You're saying that you're positing that you're thinking probably that it's God. Now, why is the reasoning that led you to it being God? Let's just say whatever it is, whatever X is, that is the philosophical reason for our existence. What evidence have you had to say this is the likely case when we've never seen a God ever produce anything? So there's no prior observations from which you to draw from, right? Normally would say, hey, this likely explanation because we've seen similar things, or we've seen other things that we could relate and draw an inference from, some kind of abductive reasoning. But you're just saying almost by fiat that you're thinking that God is the most likely possibility for an explanation based upon what, if I can ask?
Right, because I feel like every religion does the same thing, and it's their own God. And it's also if you had never heard of God, you would never think it was God.
Yeah, I mean, somebody had to tell you that it was God, right? I mean, you never found by discovery, here's a God explanation. Somebody had to say, hey, we're observing all this, and we're going to tell you it's a deity, and they pick whatever deity they randomly choose from all the 44,000 different types of deities. So what reasoning are you using to say that the likely explanation is your particular version of your particular deity that you have in mind?
So I guess I'll have to go from general to specific, but so it looks like I'm frozen. Am I frozen?
Not right
I
now,
can
but
hear
you're-
you pretty
you're-
well. I
you're
think
going in and
your
out.
video's lagging a little.
Oh gosh. But I'm gonna try and keep going through my stuff later.
What you might want to do, Wayne, let's try this and see if this works. Try turning off your camera and see if that saves some of your bandwidth. Maybe
Okay.
Dave will throw. Now talk.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now? Am I clear?
That's a lot better.
Seems like it.
Okay. So and I was so I think this whole thing with existence and like how we came to be and stuff like that. When I listen to people like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Lawrence Krauss talk about how what does it mean to them that they don't live forever, and they say, well, because I don't live forever, because I'm not infinite, and this comes from Neil deGrasse Tyson. He says it gives my life even more meaning and purpose than it would have if I were infinite or if I would have lived forever. It gives my life that much more meaning. And so with us, that the universe itself isn't eternal. It's not infinite. It had a beginning. I think we can apply that same reasoning to, anything that, or I guess we can say most things that we know about in the universe that begin. They begin for some reason or some cause. And so with the universe having a beginning, I think we should apply this, or it could be applied to the universe, that the universe itself has some meaning or purpose because it's not eternal. Now, a lot of people will have a point if the universe were eternal. If we never found out about Big Bang cosmology and we always thought the universe was eternal and static, you will have a point. You will have a point that the universe probably doesn't have any meaning at all, and it wouldn't need to, because it's eternal. Things that are eternal don't need any philosophical meaning behind it necessarily. But I think with Lemitri's findings, I think that changed the game because we now know the universe isn't eternal. That why question definitely isn't going anywhere now. It's actually become more of a problem that we need to answer, or we need to address.
But this is about science. How are you getting to God? Is what my question was. If there's a reason, what is getting you to formulate that reason as God? Is my actual question. Just because it's not eternal, you could be any explanation.
So now I'll take it from specific, or from general to more specific in a sense. Whatever was this agent, and it doesn't necessarily have to be God. That thing, that agent, that whatever it was, I would say its very nature would have to be eternal itself, or it would have to be in a sense reality itself. Now let me explain what I mean by that. When we think of pre-Big Bang, I guess if that's even a word, when we think pre-Big Bang,
no, it's not.
We maybe
we're going to be talking about this Sunday.
Good. When most people think about pre-Big Bang or before the universe existed, you ask people to close their eyes and they'll say, oh, maybe the universe or maybe the world was just dark before the Big Bang. You got a problem. There was no universe. There was no world. There was nothing. There wasn't, when you close your eyes, you see black. There was no black. There was no white. There weren't any colors. There was nothing. And so I would say that type of philosophical, in an abstract sense, that type of nothing doesn't exist. Very much so, because nothing is nothing. Nothing from nothing is nothing. And Max, so you.
Oh, sorry, Wayne. I thought you were finished.
Yeah. So that's one thing, and so whatever caused this whole thing, it would have to. We exist inside of space and time. So whenever we talk about this thing of existence, what we mean is something began to exist in these three spaces. Out of our existence, that doesn't exist. Whatever caused us, its very nature had to be existence. And so how do you get from general to specific? In Exodus, and I was actually talking to Robert today, in the book of Exodus in the Bible, remember this was written like 2,000 years ago. Moses, he's talking to God, and he says, "What's your name?" And God says, "I am. Tell Pharaoh that I am has sent you." And a lot of people look over the significance in particular statement. And I think it definitely does prove that, whatever this thing was, how could I even put it? It was reality itself. It doesn't necessarily make sense if you're thinking about three spaces, but whatever created this universe was reality itself, eternity itself. In the Marvel comics, they actually have a being called Eternity, and that being is existence itself. Whenever this being shows itself to people.
Eternity and which twin?
One above all.
One above all was the one you're referring to.
Yeah, one above all. And so it doesn't make sense in the traditional way of thinking of existence. But whatever caused our existence was existence itself. And so I get from general to specific where I say, well, this narrative in the Bible has something comparable to what we expect. So I think I think there's more credence to say that it definitely was God.
All right, Mac.
So I take it that you believe that there absolutely has to be an agent. Is that right?
I would say yes. If you could show me otherwise, I'll be open to it.
Okay. So if you think there has to be an agent, does it also leave room for other agents? Multiple agents?
Oh, could there be multiple agents? Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. And do those agents actually have to be eternal to have started the universe? Could they have used whatever they are to make the universe and then be dead?
It's possible, but then you would have to ask the question of where you come from, and then it would be an infinite sphere.
Well, I feel like it's that way either way, though. Even if they didn't have to use what they were to create the universe, well, who created them? It's already infinite.
But if that were the case, will we even exist? Because it would be this infinite factory of gods making other gods or whatever, and then we wouldn't be here, but we are here.
Right. And I just want. It's funny to me because you just asked an atheist if that was the case, would we be here? Because I think yes, absolutely. Because that's what we have. I think that, like I said, what you've read of the Big Bang, I think it speaks for itself enough that we don't really need an agent or a supreme being to explain further than that, past the singularity. Because I feel like if something started the Big Bang, or some agent, then it would have had to exist before the Big Bang. But I feel like we've already all agreed here that nothing existed before the Big Bang.
I don't agree, but we talk about it Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends.
I think it's a nonsensical question. Personally, it's nonsensical
Okay.
to say
actually nine.
anything of this.
You got it right,
Yeah.
Mac.
There's 9 different forms
Scott.
of nothing, to
You're
be
dead on.
precise.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I believe that nothing is kind of a odd term, but I mean, if you just if you hold the multiverse theory and any kind of high notion, then there could be something before that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be an agent. So I'm still having a hard time to like figure out how you're getting an agent from like that created everything. I'm just having a hard time seeing how you're actually getting there.
So it goes back to that notion of, and instead of saying God, let's say existence, let's say reality, let's say reality, another reality in a sense. But that doesn't necessarily make sense, because reality doesn't think, right? Reality doesn't it doesn't make decisions. It begins to sound less and less like you're talking like about this abstract thing, and more like you're talking about a being, some type of consciousness. But I could be wrong.
Right. So I'm trying to think really how to drive the conversation from here, because we're just kind of disagreeing on this point. So,
well, can I just jump in
here? Yeah, go for it, Rob.
Give a slight little. Well, I don't want it to be a tangent, but maybe
I was gonna go off on a tangent.
different flavor just added into the mix, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Go for it.
If an ancient Israelite was in this discussion, the ancient Israelite would say that before the universe existed, there was God and his council, a divine council. But an ancient Israelite will also say there's no longitude, latitude ways of describing this experience, that reality that God's in. And I think somehow that's what Wayne's trying to communicate. Now, in our modern context, you do have various theories. I hold to the lambda CDM model that goes to pretty much a quantum fluctuation singularity. And definitely time does start. There is no pre-existent time out there somewhere. And so this is what the big discussion is going to be on Sunday. What was going on before? If there was something going on. Multiverse theories actually, ironically, don't help the situation because you do have ex nihilo things going on in the multiverse. So, but yeah, an ancient Israelite would argue, okay, you've got the science model part, but from what's been revealed through Revelation, God and a council of a family of, maybe it could be a plethora of beings, existed before the universe. Yeah.
And they could be looking for an answer just like us. Then where does it go?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Walmart. Where you get everything else.
Damn, Walmart. It's true. You know what? Discussion over. Thank you, Kyle.
It's not that simple. You would respond to Rob.
I thought it explained it perfectly. Yeah. I think he was cutting out just a little bit for me, so I'm not sure if I missed very much.
Who? Me?
Rob.
You.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, just on my end. I'm not sure if anyone else heard it, but one thing that
Give him
I do want to.
You want him to kind of hit on his two points again, real quick, so you can know what he's.
Real quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Rob, if you will, reiterate what you were saying just a second ago.
The ancient Israelite, as a fourth person in this discussion, hypothetically, would argue that you have your, and they wouldn't dismiss it, you have your naturalistic, mechanical drive of trying to reason out what's going on, but through revelation we believe that there is, and they'd say this definitely, there is a being out there, and it's not just God alone. You're talking of a whole plethora of a council, so to speak, that does not have length with height time descriptions. That's what they would
Is
say.
that is that more of a classical
Okay.
theist or like a theistic personalism where you have this God that's a great demerge of the universe that's kind of making the universe exist independently of wherever he exists? Or the classical theist where God and the universe are kind of somehow intricately linked together, so God is everywhere, is ubiquitous, but he also created it
The funny thing
somehow.
is, yeah,
Whatever. I mean, because
the
how did
funny,
he?
yeah, that,
It was because he's not out. I mean, what does it mean to be out of time, right? I mean, if the universe didn't
yeah,
have a certain time, there's no time for God to even make something, even from his perspective. So,
right.
how are you looking at where this being resides in order to do this?
And the funny thing is that there's actually a key word used in the New Testament called the kenosis of Christ, the emptying nature of Christ, that he had to empty himself and come to our level, so to speak. And so there's this belief, and the Jews held to this idea. It's called the two powers in heaven, where God operates as two powers, but the second power has to be that continual emptying link. So God is part of the universe, and yet at the same time he's separate. So it's those both of those models joined in one. That was their form of monotheism.
Okay.
All right, Mac.
All right. I feel like looking at any religion like that who has like some kind of God, some kind of part of reality and not part of reality being, it's they're always invisible. They're always invisible. They always have a lot of the same characteristics of something that doesn't exist at all. So there's no way that we can measure them except through prayer. But when we've tried to measure it through prayer, we found just as much correlation as we haven't. And I'm not sure why the Israelites thought so much. Why, there's definitely a divine being or a council like guiding them, and that's going to and like come back and save them, and then they'll have an afterlife or whatever. I feel like it sounds a lot to me. It just reminds me of even more ancient people who just heard the sound of thunder, and what was that? Must be the gods doing something, or like creating lightning. But then we find these actual physical attributes to nature, and it explains them. And then I kind of see why, if we've explained it this way, why do we still need this religious explanation? Did I
So
make myself clear enough, or did I?
no, you're clear. And so it goes back to what I said in the beginning, where people think that because we've innovated technology to a certain point where now we have iPhones and iPads and et cetera, now we understand the universe more, that now religion should go away. There's no use of it. But religion it hasn't innovated technology as much as it's innovated culture, as much as how it's innovated how we think. So, for example, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was because we had religion that also led the way to philosophy. And when we had philosophy, we actually started using mathematical arguments, and we actually use some of that stuff when we do science. So like all of these things, they link off and pair off together. So and you also said so I got it, the gaps argument. So sure, there were different cultures and different regions of people who had gods based off of nature itself, right? But the Israelite God is different, where they didn't make a god out of something they saw in nature. Uh, this God was more or less based off of, like I said, those philosophical notions of why does anything exist at all? Why is there a world? Why is there a planet? Stuff like that at all. And so they would say, well, it's because of Yahweh, He who causes things to be. And so I don't think science even deals with that question. I think it's a non-scientific question that's open for inquiry, and I think for the longest, I think atheists actually have dealt with the wrong type of questions. Because I usually see atheists like saying like, well, we don't need a God because of scientific explanation, which that doesn't really answer anything that the theist about. But
And that's not all atheists argue either. I have a friend who she's just an atheist because she just doesn't see any real evidence to show that Jesus was either real or he was the Son of God, and that's all she needs, and that's it. And as far as religion has made, or like it's integrated society, and it's made contributions to philosophy and science and whatnot, I feel like it hasn't just not contributed enough to society, which it has contributed a lot to society. I feel like it hasn't contributed anything to nature. I feel like it just hasn't contributed anything to nature, like explanations for nature, and that's what it claims to do in many cases. And as far as that's how we got to philosophy, I feel like that's how some cultures got to philosophy. But if I'm sure if you look, and maybe I just need to do my own research and look at this, and I will. I'm sure you can find some cultures that didn't have necessarily just gods; they just had thinking, like they had some kind of philosophy. It doesn't take religion every time to get to philosophy, and it doesn't have to take the same path every time. And as far as it contributes to science, I feel like they're two different topics that can work together, and sometimes they don't. And I think a lot of times, even if they're working together, science can harm religion, and religion can also harm science, depending on who does it. Obviously, it's not just a general rule, I don't think. And I did want to make a comment real quick that I'm definitely going to take a look at One Above All and Eternity from Marvel Comics, because that sounds cool. So thanks for mentioning
Eternity
it.
was actually Eternity was a twin of Infinity. They were twins. They were created during the they were created at the same time at the Big Bang. But the One Above All, he's the one that's omnipotent, omnibenevolent, all the omnis that. I think he's Stan Lee, but that's just me.
Cool. Yeah, so I appreciate you guys mentioning that, because I love comic books and nerdy stuff and whatever you can see.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as that goes,
I like Marvel.
Whatever. That was another point that I wanted to make, though, is like, the Israelites didn't do the same thing as a lot of other cultures did, by making a god to explain thunder, making a god to explain why the sun rose, and a god for the moon, and why the grass grows, or whatever. No, they just made a god that kind of embodies philosophy and all of physical nature. Just pack it all into one and be like, all right, my god is better than yours and yours and yours and all of them. I feel like it wasn't. It was definitely a newer, cooler idea, but yeah.
Can you clarify that again?
Exactly on what? So
are you talking about Israelite religion in the Old Testament?
Yeah, because Wayne made the point that the Israelites didn't make a god to just explain thunder, like I said earlier. Some earlier tribes or cultures would hear thunder and be like, "Oh, what was that?" Then attribute it to a god. And he said, "Well, that's not what the Israelites did." Like, no, I agree, they didn't. They made one to explain the thunder, the wind, the stars, the moon, the sky, the sun, all of it, and philosophical questions on top of it. They just any god they'd ever heard of plus some, all into one monotheistic god, would be my proposition.
Right. So then my question to you would be, and I agree with you, that's what they did. Curiously, they would remove deity names from the natural objects of the sky, like the sun, Shemesh, would become just this light source in the sky. It wouldn't actually be designated an actual deity.
Okay.
And so my question to you would be, in the first century, you have someone like Paul, a Jew. In Galatians 4, he says that, and he's speaking to non-Jewish and a Hellenistic mix as well, a Hellenistic Jewish mix, that they were all once slaves to these objects in the sky that you call gods. And then there's a throwaway line where he says, but they're not gods. They're just natural objects in the sky. So, but here's a guy, here's a religious Jew using, in this case, Second Temple Jewish Christianity derived from the Old Testament as a means to say, look at this more rationally than superstitiously. That's what I find interesting. And here's a guy who's at the forefront of the Christian movement.
Yeah, and to approach that, I don't know if it makes it any more true though, like his religious claims. You know what I mean? Because
And that's a fair point.
looking at Nikola Tesla, I've recently learned he made a ton of contributions to science, and he's why we have an alternating current for like our electricity. Like that's why our electricity runs as well as it does. Is because of Nikola Tesla, and I don't know everything he's done. I'm still researching him, but as smart as the scientist was, he still believed in a flat Earth and the firmament.
And he had a relationship
and with a what? I didn't hear.
He also had a relationship with a bird.
Oh, with a bird. See,
With
yeah. So
yeah.
Wait, stop. Wait,
So,
wait a minute. We can't just
my
let that
point.
act. We can't let that go. I need you to explain that, Rob. What do you mean by he had a relationship with a bird?
I forget now. I think it was a dove.
Oh no!
that
I just read about this. Oh no!
I think it was a dove. I could be mistaken on what bird it was, but I'm pretty sure I read he had a relation. Like it, there are conjectures whether it was sexual, but I don't think so. But yeah, apparently he had a really close.
We need to
I
have
don't
an
see how
entire
that
talk
would-
about that now.
How would that be?
Russian vids.
Unless by sexual you mean that the dove was using Nikola as a perch at times, that would make sense. But other than that,
Right.
I don't see that.
He fell in love. It's a pigeon. He fell in love with a pigeon.
Pigeon. That's what it says.
Oh, pigeon.
Are you
There
shitting
go.
me?
That's
Are you shitting me?
That's what it says. I mean, out of everything you've heard on the show, Kyle, do you think we're shitting you?
I know he was. No, I mean, I'm sure that he loved birds and stuff like that. But I mean,
yeah.
I mean, he says, "I loved that
And
pigeon as
to
a
be
man
honest,
loved a woman, and she loved me.
What
And
is
as
wrong
long
with
as I
us as a
had her, there was
society?
purpose in my life." I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
To be honest,
People love trees,
I like
cars.
I like Tesla because his name sounds really cool, but
Yeah,
he
it
didn't
kinda
really
does.
contribute
It's enough.
much to the scientific method. That's for
What?
sure. He didn't really.
What are you?
Not
are
to
you
the
fucking
method.
high
Not
right
the method,
now?
maybe, but
Not to the
No.
method, but Tesla was one of the greatest minds of
Yeah.
electricity of all
But-
time.
but to the scientific
Yeah,
community, yes.
There's
Absolutely.
the people before him that were already thinking of the things he was thinking.
Oh, I think you're
Yeah,
insane.
and I mean, and just going off of another scientific name, Sir Isaac Newton, as great and smart as he was a shut-in, and I mean he was like he wasn't perfect either. Like you can't point to one human and say, look, they had good ideas and they were also religious. I feel like it just doesn't work. I think it's very anecdotal.
So, but when I bring up the Paul reference, what I'm saying is that, and Paul wasn't perfect either, not by a long shot. He killed people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he repented of that after his conversion. But the point is that you have this foundational. So if there's if there's genuine revelation from God, and this logos concept of the psychological drive to think rationally. So you have all humans across time. We can include Tesla in this. That we're all, in Christian lingo, we're all fallen, and we can corrupt things quite easily. We're not omniscient and perfect. But there's this drive, this guide to do the scientific method, an equivalent of the scientific method, to bring out the truth in things. And so
Right.
then so my question to you would be, why was Christianity the unique voice in that discussion, where Christianity saw the universe as a book of nature, like a book, not not some superstitious environment like what the Greco-Roman people were saying? And that obviously gave way to Western civilization.
Right. And
Yeah.
I don't know if they had the greatest, or I don't know if they definitely had the greatest contribution to science and whatnot. But I'm willing to just grant that for the sake of discussion, and be like, okay, sure. But if they had the most power through the centuries, then they would have the most means to get these answers. And when we find the scientific method, then we really start to narrow down what the answers to things are. And it doesn't really matter who found it. I feel like if there was a divine being guiding that along, was as old as the earth is and humanity in general, why didn't it come along earlier? I feel like that's just as relevant as a question. And it's not an end all be all kind of question. I feel like it's just as relevant though. But yeah.
Wait, can you you kind of broke up with why didn't it come up earlier? What was that you said just before that?
Oh, if because I think your point was, if there was a deity guiding things along, and Christians like founded the scientific method and gave all these contributions to science and the knowledge that we have as a human society, well then, like, why'd it happen like that? And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter who founded the scientific method. If there was a deity, I feel like it's just as credible to ask why didn't the scientific method, or why didn't we gain this knowledge well before that we had, like back when, for instance, and I know we're not just focusing on Christianity, why didn't we have answers like this back when Adam and Eve took a bite of the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Like, why were we not allowed to know things back then, but now God is
Thank God there's
fostering
no
this knowledge?
ancient alien theorists in this room.
Kyle, wait, Kyle.
Whole new discussion.
Or are there?
But that's a legit
The
question.
answer's out there.
That's
You
a
all
question
think we
I've
would-
also asked.
Can't trust any of you.
The thing is, y'all all strawman me and my argument. I don't believe in ancient aliens. I just think that the Sphinx is older than it. Oh yeah, I can't talk about it anymore. But if I could talk about it, then I would.
Yeah, you
definitely
could,
change
is
your
what he would
mind,
say.
You would debunk.
Exactly.
Kyle,
Glad we're on the
stop
same
it,
page.
man. Stop it, Kyle.
Not now, Dave.
But yeah, Mac, that's a good question. And by the way, I've only been a Christian for about 9 years, and as I've accumulated a careful reading of the text, and I wanted to try and put myself in the shoes of an Israelite and various people groups in the ancient Near East, basically the Old Testament story. even ancient Near Eastern scholars will point out the peculiar psychology of those people. And if God does exist, and if He is indeed working through the Israelites as, a light on a hill, as many of the verses speak about, that Israel is like a light on the hill that'll, psychologically guide the other nations. I find that to be true if the narrative is right, because all that superstition, God has to, like what Yoda says, make them unlearn what they've learned. And there's
Argument from
generational
Yoda fallacy.
baggage in that. Sorry, Kyle?
Yoda's never
Yeah.
fallacious.
Argument from Yoda fallacy. Argument from Yoda fallacy.
Yeah.
The
Rob,
argument ad yodeling.
Right.
No, I accept it.
I
Yoda's
think you're
always
missing
welcome.
a point, Rob. I think, look at the question is science compatible religion? I even had to kind of rethink my position on this, because if religion is going to be, I think most people would agree that most religions, there are naturalistic religions, but most people would say that a religion would posit some kind of supernatural deity of some kind, so some kind of deification. So when we're asking a question, is it compatible with science? We all agree science has to adhere to methodological naturalism, right? That's what makes it a powerful thing. As Max said earlier, philosophy guides science. Without philosophy, science would be pretty much useless. One of the reasons is that it adheres to that. So by asking the question, how do you have a compatibility between something that's supernatural when science has to be natural? That's where I see the disconnect.
Right. But you see, a Jew would not disconnect the two. They wouldn't even use words like supernatural. You have the world, the heavens and the earth, and that's it. God's, up there.
So the way to reconcile that would be, there is no such thing as a supernatural. In that case, God would be considered in the natural realm, but again, what does that have for meaning wise?
Yeah.
Because that means we should be able to have detection of him. We should be able to experiment. We should be able to reasonably discern his existence, or at least have a means to do so. If you're using
you're
science.
literally quoting Romans 1:20 verbatim when you said that, because Paul says God's invisible attributes. So God's invisible attributes, that's the key word, invisible, can be understood by the cosmos, by the universe. Now, this is where apologists like Hugh Ross, and you've had him on the show, will use his work like Improbable Planet to make those type of arguments. So that's where people like him, from his back, his speciality.
But he's not positing God as a scientific position. I've read Improbable Planet. I mean, I think the science is right on it, and I think he's just drawing an inference that he wants to draw, but he's not positing that inference as a scientific conclusion.
And
he's using the science to say. Hang on one second. He's using the science to bolster up his beliefs. But the question is science compatible with those beliefs if those beliefs fall outside what science can actually determine one way or another?
Wayne, you were going to say something?
Also, go ahead. Go ahead, Mac.
I was going to say. Well,
go ahead, Wayne. Sorry, I thought it was.
Of course.
Anyway,
and also there are different ideas of God, and so as far as the idea of God that the Christians are positing, of course, science would never be able to measure that God, of course, but I think what Christians are trying to say, at least the ones the Christians who aren't crazy, I think what they're trying to say is we can measure the effects that God has, or when God interacts with the universe, he at least leaves some type of evidence. And so, for example, Christians would say that the Bible makes a prediction, or the Bible gives the narrative that people like King David existed, or people like King Saul existed, or Paul existed, or Jesus existed, right? And so we should find some type of evidence for those type of events that happen. And the more evidence you find for those historical or naturalistic events, then the probability of the reliability of the account or the story or whatever gives it more credence. And so I think based off of the evidence we have for the historicity of the Bible and stuff like that, I think those are things that can be measured. I mean, for example, like in 1995 we found an inscription in the general. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's pronounced Tel Del Dan in Israel. You hadn't heard of
Tel
it?
Dan.
Don't ask me.
Yeah.
Yeah. and
But I don't know what inscription he's talking about.
yeah, it's an inscription of like King
Unless you can
David's
clarify
name.
it. Yeah.
It's an inscription of King David's name on like a slab of rock on something that used to be a temple. And so in 1995 we found that, and we keep finding inscriptions and evidences for the people's existence, etc. Now, of course, that doesn't prove God, but what I'm trying to posit is it definitely gives more credence to the narrative that these people are recollecting. So I think that based off of the evidences we have for that, definitely it gives the narrative more credibility, and I think that's all you need. I don't think you need to prove it, beyond like 100% or etc. There's a lot of things we can't prove in history 100%. That's a lot of things. For example, I don't know if you know, the evidence we have for Alexander the Great came between like anywhere between 150 to 300 years after he died, and that's the evidence we got for him. So I mean, like stuff like that. It definitely does give God, etc. more credence, more credibility.
Well, let me.
I just want to
Go for
clarify
it.
to Mac that I think we are kind of going on a tangent here. I think we should go back to the topic, and that is there a genuine problem between science and religion? And let's just stick to Christianity.
Yeah,
And quickly, because we're at the hour and a half mark already. So
Yeah.
we need to start.
And I'm
wrap
at
up. So Mac, I'm gonna let you
22% battery.
respond to.
Yeah,
I'm
so
gonna
go
let you
ahead,
respond to
Wayne,
what was said there.
or okay.
Mac, you go ahead, and then we'll go to Wayne.
Okay. As far as people existing in history go, and whether or not it makes it relevant, I want to just share like a personal story or experience with everyone real quick. My mother is super duper into genealogy, and she has actually traced back my family lineage from us to Adam and Eve 2 times, on 2 different parts of our family trees. And when I told her I was an atheist, she took that as a direct insult because I'm saying that maybe half of our family like didn't exist or whatever. And why would they make that people up, or those people up who don't exist? Like if you and I would even say like, why would they make up Noah, Moses, anyone we can't confirm as a person? And it just all comes back down to anyone who's in that kind of priest line now. Well, why would they lie about it? Well, they lie about it for power, for birthright, for whatever, according to these holy scriptures. So I'm not sure how much trust you put in it, and how relevant you're saying you think it makes the Bible. But to me, it's just, I feel like it's just another good way to stay in power and control the society around you to what you think it should be, or hold on to a belief and keep that in society.
Okay, Wayne, we'll let you have the last word on it.
Yeah. So I think this would probably be maybe one of the most important things I'd say. But so it's as far as that relates, there is like this conspiratorial element that a lot of people who are not religious feel towards religion, where, like you said, religion either keeps people in power or keeps people enslaved or keeps people in the dark, and people use religion for horrible things, etc. When it comes to Christianity, that's actually one of the reasons why I'm a Christian, because an argument like that, it doesn't work with the Christian faith. So, for example, people like Paul and Peter and James, etc. James and Paul, they weren't believers. James was the brother of Jesus, and the Bible says Jesus' family thought he was beside himself, and that just means they thought he was crazy. And then people like Paul, he definitely didn't believe in Jesus because he was killing Christians. And then they have these conversion stories, and after they convert, guess what? They die horrible, gruesome deaths. And so you don't see this thing where people use the resurrection of Jesus so they can get power, so they can get money, or any of these things. It definitely seems in history these people really did believe that this happened, and it wasn't just one or two people. It was a plethora of people who had this belief. So it's not evidence that it definitely did happen, but it's evidence that these people believed it, and we definitely need an explanation as to why they did believe this. And I think the best explanation is because it happened. So that I will rest my case on that. And and the science and religion go hand in hand. It depends, because like people answer in Genesis, they think it can, but like I said before, if they were right, we all would be dead. And so because we're not dead, the younger creationists are wrong.
Yeah.
Huh.
Kind of a given,
just
yeah.
two things real quick, if I can. As
No, you
far
can't.
as
All right, guys. We'll see you tomorrow at.
Good night. See you on Monday or Sunday or whatever. No, I'm kidding. Who are you again, Matt?
That's what happens when I open my mouth ever.
Somebody's having trouble at
that's
home.
fine. I lost it.
I will help you open your mouth. Trust me.
Say what? Oh,
Oh.
now I forgot
Left us
what I was going to say.
Yeah, left us speechless on that one, huh? I don't know
Actually,
you were
now
going to
you
talk
guys
about
are
two
breaking
things.
up a little bit. Can you guys
Well,
still hear me?
I'll
You were
just.
gonna talk
Yeah, I
about
was
two
going to talk about
things.
two things. I remember the second one.
Go ahead.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, everybody's breaking up a little bit. Hang on one second, Kyle. You were going to say something
Okay.
first. Once you say
I
something,
can hear
you were breaking
Steve.
up first. And I don't think Matt can hear you. So what are you saying, Kyle?
And can I also make a
I was
Yeah.
just.
closing as well?
Yes, we're
Yeah.
going to let you all do that and plug your channels and all that. But I was just going to say that we're just going to all sit here in complete silence, awkwardly, until Mac finally remembers what it is that he wanted to say. So nobody say anything. All eyes on Mac until he remembers.
Perfect. Again, no pressure. I like this no pressure thing you and I have going, Kyle. To what Wayne said, last thing, like last response for it is, when salvation's on the line, and you have a history of killing a lot of Christians, I feel like that's a really good reason to want to believe in a God and salvation of your soul and not burn in hell forever. There could have been a number of reasons why he believed, or wanted to believe, but I feel like he had a lot of reasons too. And if he was crazy enough to just slaughter so many people, I would feel like that's just another reason he may just change his entire worldview for the sake of salvation. And other than that, one thing I wanted to end on was, Rob said that Yoda quote, and I liked it. They must unlearn what they know, or we must teach them to unlearn what they know. However that goes. I feel like science does the same thing.
What you've learned.
You must unlearn what you've learned. Okay. I like that, and I feel like that is a good way to look at religion. You can learn something about this whole spiritual realm if you let go of what you know about the physical world. But also, we learn things through science by letting go of just using our senses and just going by what we can just see. Like the Earth's not flat, right? We can learn so much more if we just. That's right. Yeah, I need paid. It's if you kind of unlearn what you know, or you just open up your mind. The same thing goes for the scientific method, except the big difference for me is we measure things with the scientific method. You can't really measure things with religion. I feel like most of it's very anecdotal, and it carries on for any religion. It's just as true as the other one. So that's the difference for me between science and religion, and why I think science is more credible, and why they can still be compatible, but in many cases, and they aren't. And I feel like that's why science can be used to disprove religion. And I'll shut up now. You
Okay.
can stop looking at me. Thank
All
you.
right. All right. We'll now let everybody, if they want to wrap up any thoughts, keep them brief though, as brief as you can, so that we don't start up another discussion, because that's usually what happens when we do these. It spawns another type of debate.
Oh,
but
I'm going to open up a huge can
Okay, good. Dave, get the mute button ready. But yeah, go ahead and plug your channels. Let everybody know where they can find you, follow you, tweet you, poke you, all that good stuff. Rob, I'll be poking you later, by the way. So look out for that. But we'll
I'm
start with
poking
Rob
him right now. Poke.
Oh my gosh.
Who first?
Oh yeah.
Whoa,
Oh,
whoa,
Steve,
watch
I'm
where that
trying-
finger
I'm
goes.
trying What, am I going first?
Yeah,
Yeah,
do it.
you
Go.
want to?
Come on. We're running out of time.
Go,
Okay.
General.
So, just to close, I think I actually like Mac. I reckon you and I
I
could
like you
have some
too.
really neat discussions if you want to do that. And at the end of the day, as I practice, my walk in Christ and all that, when I go into the lab and I do science, especially in physics and math, I can't help but be at awe in regards to the fact that I can actually, see beauty in the language of mathematics and actually see the universe as intelligible, and all that stuff is just jumbled into one chaotic ball of stuff flowing through my mind. And I could not have that same euphoric feeling if I was an atheist as I was beforehand. But at the same time, I don't want to conclude that my faith is based on emotions, because again, I'm seeing this as models, and I see Christianity being consistent with science. I don't see an inherent contradiction.
Okay. And where can people find you, Rob?
Sentinel Apologetics. That's it. I'll be releasing videos in the near future on these topics.
Awesome.
By the way, we'll publicly say congratulations, sir, to your good news, your recent good
thank you.
news. Absolutely. Rob is being taken off the market, unfortunately. I'm crushed and horrified at it, but congrats anyway.
Don't worry, the dinner date is
Congratulations.
still on tabs. I will promise you to take you out on that, because I'll be closer to
See?
America. You see?
You heard this. You heard this, guys. For when that day comes, you heard this. This is proof. All right, Wayne. Ready when you are.
All right. What was I about to say? I was about to say something else.
That you're an atheist. Now,
maybe not. But
I'll take the maybe.
I'm sorry, I let you down, Kyle.
So
You got a maybe. That's
Christians actually were the first atheists, you could say. Christians actually were the first, people in their time to say, well, no, like reality doesn't work like that. Of course, like the reason the sun comes up isn't because, some fairies or gods or something like that. And then Christians would bring a more rational approach. So I think the Christian religion definitely complements the scientific method, or at least not the scientific method, the philosophy behind science, the why, those why questions and stuff like that. So I think the Christian religion can definitely complement science. People can find me at Science Enthusiast, and the last thing I'll say in this whole discussion is I think there is this block with both non-religious people and religious people, where they think these questions are the same, but they're very different. For example, or at least they deal with very different things. If I asked you, why did you go and make a pot of coffee or something? And you go and you say, oh, well, because of the laws of combustion, and the water heats up and all of this stuff happens, and you give me the best model explanation of how this happened. Another fairly simple explanation as to why you made a cup of coffee was because you were thirsty. And so they both answer, two different ways of thinking, or two different questions per se. And I think people are looking at it either too hard, or they're not looking at it hard enough.
Can agree with that.
Tired would be the reason I would give for somebody making coffee, but tomatoes. All right, Mac.
I don't like coffee.
All right, guys. That was a fantastic show. Thank you
that's
for.
I keep ruining everything. I'm sorry, Kyle. First
right.
off, I want to thank Kyle and Steve. Thank you both for having me on. This is my first conversation like this, like a sit down with people who don't agree with me. Besides telling my parents I'm an atheist. And it was very, very nice. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Wayne. You're both very, very kind. You guys are both really cool guys. I'd like to talk to you again, either on your channels or mine, if you guys would have me. And if anyone else wants to find me, like I said, you can find my channel on YouTube, Gray Skeptic, and I'm on Twitter as a Gray Skeptic Mac. On my channel, I discuss a little bit of science, a decent amount of religion, and I really like to talk about morality. So if any of that interests you, come check me out. And thanks everyone in the live chat also for coming tonight to watch.
The Gray Skeptic, I thought that was going to be a play off of 50 Shades, and although when I found your channel, I enjoyed it. It wasn't quite the experience that I thought it was at first, but
I've been thinking about taking my shirt off for more videos, so I'll let you know if that changes.
See, this is called being open-minded in progress. Just try it, Rob. I think you should try that as well.
I'll do one soon. I promise. I'll do one for you, Kyle.
He's going to start taking his shirt off to do his videos on his channel. I said that you should probably see how that works with Sentinel cards. All right, Steve, all right. We got
let's stop the show, Shelby.
Oh, okay. Everybody, stop what they're doing right now. Nobody.
I need to go.
Rob. All right, go ahead, Steve.
Getting creepy. This is getting creepy.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, I don't have much to add except that I have seen Wayne come a long way in the last 3 years. I'm not here to convince him of his theological beliefs. I'm here to change some of his scientific beliefs that he had before. And I think that if you're going to ask the question, is religion compatible with science, you can't logically say that God is the explanation for anything scientifically, because science has to exclude that possibility. So if you want to posit it from a theological stance, fine. You want to posit it from a philosophical stance, that's fine. But to say that God is a scientific explanation, that's why I have to draw the line and say, no, I don't think that's the case, because I think there's a contradiction to be made there. Because science excludes those types of possibilities by fiat, by the very nature of science. That's all I would add to it.
And super chats, Steve.
And super chats. So Ken Hoven's CPA, you like the show, so he gave us $1. Thank you, Ken Hoven's CPA. Sandring, $20. The NonSequitur show needs to stop being so great. Not going to happen. I'm running out of things to say, and will start repeating myself. That's okay. You can repeat yourself. Isolycan, $2. You guys are reaching people, right? Nice. I think that's because the fact that I took a debate with Wayne some odd years ago, and that's only because I liked Wayne, even though he was a total ass back then. I happened to like the guy, and he challenged me on Mac Revolution, and I came at him with both barrels. And as Mac said, he came back a couple hours later and said, I've done the research, or I've looked into what you said, and you know what, I think that you're actually right. He took about a month or so, maybe a month or two, talked to myself a little bit more and to General Han Solo, and eventually realized that young Earth creation was not tenable. So he is somebody who can learn and realize that some of these things are just not the case. That's quite a distinction from a lot of other people we run into, especially young Earth creationists, that no matter what you tell them, they're just going to think you're wrong. But here's a very unique case of somebody that not only was willing to listen, but willing to actually do their due diligence to go look at the evidence and say, you know what, you guys were right. And that's to be amended.
By the way, SpongeBob in the live chat said that, I'm sorry, this is just something that has to be addressed. I cannot let this go. He says that science means to know, and we don't know that pine trees and elephants are related. Okay, I'm going to point you to a debate that single-handedly blew this wide open. That has been debunked, and you can go to Aaron Ra versus Kent Hovind and watch and see why elephants and pine trees are, in fact, related. He spells it out.
They can't mate, though.
It's clear as day.
They can't mate, though.
It's clear as day.
Right.
Unfortunately,
Right.
if
Did you guys make those T-shirts, by the way?
That?
Yeah, we did,
Who's
of course.
thinking that?
Do you honestly want to ask that question? Because you got to think somebody in their mind going, well, how do you take a pine tree and take an elephant? You know, elephant love. I don't know, but they don't understand they're both eukaryotic, right? They still are both a type of karyote, and so they are related at some point. Millions of years ago, it's reality. It's fact. It's just no scientifically conceivable way that's an untrue statement.
Standing for truth, get Patrick and Sandy and go in the pineapple and watch
Sandy's smart.
Aaron Ron Kent Hovind and learn how pineapples and elephants are in fact related. It's a thing. 100%. 100%.
100%. Absolutely guaranteed to be true. Well, we also know how asses were evolved. You know what? We'll let Kyle take that one because they're awesome. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I can.
They were naturally
selected
for.
I couldn't tell you how they're evolved, but I can. I can speak to the anatomy, certainly.
Yeah, no. So I standing for truth. He leaves some comments every so often, but it's just I only respond for comical purposes. I don't know if he's a troll. I don't know if he's a Poe, but some of the things he says, I honestly can't take him serious enough to even.
He's a Poe. He's 100%
Poe. I think he's a Poe.
100%.
Yeah, I think
he's funny,
I'm pretty sure that he is.
Definitely a troll.
Oh, he is. He is.
Definitely
but I think he's a troll too. I agree.
Go ahead.
I'm done.
Oh, that's it? Okay. All right. Well, I want to say thank you to Wayne, and I guess Matt got pissed and left, so
I'm still here.
Rage
My phone's
quit.
dying, I have to plug it in. Rage quit.
Cool.
I want that dumpster.
And Rob, my only thing would be to say it's not too late to call off the wedding. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I'll keep that noted.
Awesome. Still a chance, guys. See, all you need is hope, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we will leave you until Sunday. We'll be back for a doubleheader on Sunday. We'll be here at 3 Eastern and 8 Eastern with we'll be big banging at 3 p.m. Eastern and then wooing at 8. So woo and big banging. What can go wrong? And tomorrow we'll release the video with Logic, Aaron Ra, Jeff Holiday, Godless Engineer, Shannon, Prophet of Zod, several other creators. It's going to be awesome. They did a fantastic job. So you're going to want to make sure that you see that tomorrow at 9 a.m. And with that, I'm Kyle. That's Steve. Dave's back there. And we'll see you Sunday.
Non-sequitur. Your facts are uncoordinated.